At the same time this video is going up, there's another video going up that's doing a deep dive on the CPI figures. Now I'm keen to keep this one nice and short, so let's see if we can pick 3 graphs to chat about in 5 minutes. Let's jump over here. So, the first one we're going to look at is this measure of how broad the change in CPI is. We have core inflation measures. These core inflation measures are showing us a different way of looking at the annual growth in the consumer price index. Now, this compares to the big blue line, which is the actual annual growth in the consumer price index. Each of the alternative measures work out what's called core inflation, or the real inflation rate in terms of the rate of increase in all goods and services. This excludes outliers. All of these measures show that the general price level has risen by above 3%, the red dotted line, which is at the top of the Reserve Bank's target band. This is the first time that all these measures have been above these levels during the 2000s. However, measures that pull out more of the outliers tend to show weaker price growth. They're only a little bit over 3%, rather than being as extreme as the headline 5.9% number. The second graph here has what's behind the increase in CPI. Here we have all the different classes of consumer goods and services, color-coded by their broad category. The size of the circle represents how much the item contributed to the overall increase in the CPI. A bigger circle means a bigger contribution. As we can see here, the sharp lift in international air travel prices is the biggest increase in 2021, but as this isn't much of our average consumer bundle, the amount we purchase, it doesn't contribute that much. However, petrol and purchase of housing are much bigger contributors, even though their growth was smaller. The dotted red line in this graph represents points where price growth in 2021 was equal to its pre-COVID average. Points below this line had weaker growth, while points above it had stronger growth in 2021. As we can see, the vast majority of categories have experienced higher growth in 2021. Graph 3 is about how this inflation measure, CPI growth, relates to other inflation measures, other prices in the economy. So what about other measures of inflation in the economy? Well, they've all increased more than 3% except for the labour cost index. In fact, the annual growth in the labour cost index is still a bit lower than it was before the global financial crisis. So this gives us 2 quite different pictures about where inflation is. Now we could tell 2 stories. If we view the labour cost index as the true measure of inflation expectations and inflation in some way, this might tell us that inflation is not expected to persist, that everything we're observing is a supply shock that's transitory. If we view the labour cost index as a lagging indicator of real inflationary expectations, then we might expect to see labour costs surge over 2022 and a more persistent wage price spiral get underway due to what's being seen in these potentially leading indicators of inflation. These 2 narratives are what's framing the big CPI debate, and can lead to very different ways of understanding what the data will be. Will this spike in prices turn into persistent inflation, like the oil price spikes in the 1970s? Or will the current spike in prices truly be one-off, like the post-GST price spike in 2010? Summing up, we're all up to date on the CPI numbers at the end of 2021 when we look at these 3 graphs. With the pandemic ongoing, there are a lot of different explanations out there for what these CPI numbers mean and what the right policy response is. Just remember that any argument given has to fit these facts, as this is what has actually happened. If you found this brief discussion useful and you want to go a bit deeper, feel free to click on the other video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the future.